A lot of people, even educated people, think they know how much clothing costs to make, and they just don't understand how difficult it is to source an ethically made, environmentally responsible product. I'm Eva St. Clair, the founder of Princess Awesome. We make girls' clothes with themes usually found in the boys section. You can think dresses with dinosaurs, rocket ships, and pirates. I think the main way in which our business is affected by larger retailers is the mindset that they have inculcated in the consumer. The idea that clothing should be really cheap and basically disposable.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest problems is the linear traditional business model that a lot of companies have, including some traditional apparel companies, where it's you take the raw materials, so cotton or polyester, which comes from oil, and use new raw materials to make products, sell them, and then the customer throws them away, and then you make a new material, sell it to the customer, and it throws away. So it doesn't ever come back into the system. So you lose that value. In general, up until about the 90s or so, it was more of a fall, winter, and then a spring, summer collection. So you had turnover, but it was much less often than it is now. So with increased production methods, faster marketing, faster design, we're seeing an increase in the number of cycles of clothing. They're called micro seasons. So you'll see a lot of new shop windows just churning over their different fashion, and it's no longer the winter collection or the summer collection, it's this week's collection.
It's very hard to look at them and judge them so critically because I understand the kinds of issues that they're trading off. They want to make a large profit on what they're doing, and they also want to deliver to a public who increasingly wants to wear clothing once, throw it out, and wear something new the next day. Having started the company and now understanding why certain kinds of clothes are so inexpensive has made me think that I'm not going to buy those kinds of clothes anymore. And I have 4 children, so clothing is expensive and they wear them out very quickly. But I'm balancing that against knowing that a very small child in India sewed the sequins on my daughter's jacket.
You know, the race to the bottom of the cheaper supply chain, the more that's who gets the business, tends to have a cost somewhere. And it's a cost in whether or not you adhere to environmental regulations or you adhere to worker safety or worker wages.
The environmental impacts of the clothing industry are profound. You're polluting rivers and streams, and a lot of countries in other parts of the world, they don't have the environmental regulations that keep people from truly ruining their environment and making it harmful to those around them.
Cotton, for instance, is, these numbers are changing all the time, but it's about 40% of the fibers used for clothing. But cotton is quite a thirsty crop. It takes a lot of water, and improper irrigation techniques could lead to a lot of water stress. You're pulling from the same resources. So a cotton field is pulling from water that might have been able to supply it in the past, but with growing population, with growing consumption demand, who else is going to be pulling from that water? We live on a finite planet, and so we need to figure out how all businesses and all industries can work within those different boundaries. The customer is really important. In terms of energy use, you could wash your clothes in cold water, for instance. You could make sure that your clothing is recycled or is donated, or that if it just needs a small repair, you're comfortable sewing on a button.
My name is Cheryl Lofton. I am the owner of Cheryl A. Lofton & Associates. We're a third-generation tailoring service in the nation's capital. So we offer alterations, we offer custom tailoring, repairs, anything that requires a needle and thread, we can do it here. Absolutely, it does have a positive impact on the environment, especially because We can extend the life of your clothes by just repairing them, because we can update clothes. We can update your old clothes to the newest fashions. We can adjust it to your size. If you've gained weight, we can go bigger. If you've lost weight, we can go small. So we absolutely can extend the life of your wardrobe, and that's what we do here.
In the 5th grade, my mom put me in a beginner sewing class, and then after that I just kind of never really left. I've been sewing since then. But then when it comes to upcycling, which is something that I do a lot, you go to thrift stores or you just find any old clothing that you have, and then you put a modern twist on it, like you changing like old jeans and then making them into like something more trendy, something more recent. When you make your own clothing, you are less likely to just throw it away or just give it away. Like with this jacket in particular, or with like one of the dresses that I made for like my cousin's weddings, I find so much more value in that. I'm like this is something that I made. This is something that was like literally handmade, and it's got a whole different meaning to it.
We all have a big role to play. I think customers are really important. Businesses are really important in what they give customers to buy. Customers need to demand better from companies. So I think it all is a system, and it's all working towards a sustainable future. And sustainable future just means that we're able to all live in it.
Youth political activism has been central to pretty much every major social movement in American history, going back to the American Revolution and abolitionism and feminism and the civil rights movement, which was really made by young people who were sitting in the lunch counters and restaurants and hotels in the South, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in the 1960s. So youth political activism has been central to the American experience and to progress in our country.
Youth activism to me is when youth, so anyone under the age of 18, is passionate about any subject matter and takes action in their own hands and stands up for what they believe in.
So it started in City at Peace, this organization I'm a part of in DC. It's basically social justice theater, and I started there. And then after I learned a lot of my leadership skills, I learned a lot of language as far as racism, sexism, all those different types of systems of oppression. And then I came back sophomore year, and I was like, I really want to do something at my school, and that's kind of what Blair Interracial Dialogue turned into what One Blair turned into. So now we're here. So
I think Blair leads the county. We lead the county in activism. We were the first school last year to actually officially walk out after the election. And I didn't condone the walkout. Blazers had come to me and said they wanted space to protest the election results, to share their feelings. I gave them the stadium. Apparently it wasn't big enough. They needed all of University Boulevard, they needed Wheaton Plaza, Veterans Plaza.
I've been interested in politics for as long as I can remember, since childhood. I didn't go into electoral politics until I was 42 years old, so I was involved in lots of causes and movements and campaigns and stuff before that.
I am the chairperson of the Tacoma Park Youth Council, very exciting. And basically my responsibilities are drafting the agenda for each meeting. We have monthly meetings. And then I also am the primary connection between the city council and the youth council.
I think that there's nothing better for a political campaign than the idealism and the energy of young people.
Montgomery Blair has a number of families who are political families whose parents work on Capitol Hill and also involved in politics. and politicians. We have families whose parents are politicians. And our kids are very informed. And I like talking with them about politics and about activism. I really feel that the basis of it all is equality and fair treatment of everyone. And I love it that Montgomery Blair students embrace all cultures and immigrants and feel like it's a great place to learn, and we are strong because of our diversity.
Youth activism is a great way to be able to make change. And as I've said before, starting young, I know that I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. I don't know what form it's going to take. I don't know if it's going to be a career or just something that I do on the side, but I know that that activism is something I'm passionate about. And I know that so many other people have issues that they're also passionate about, and so by taking action, this is a great way for us to accomplish change.
Would you say that youth activism has changed your life?
Yeah. I will say that it gives me hope. It doesn't make me feel alone, because sometimes the work can be very discouraging because you're constantly fighting a system that is just bigger than you, and you just like, I'm just a kid, like what am I supposed to do? Being around like kids who are activists, it just kind of reminds me why I do it. It reminds me that I have to keep going. It reminds me that there are kids who are going through it more than I'm going through it, so I really have no excuses, you know?
If you're making a decision and half the population isn't in the room, I don't think that that decision is going to benefit everyone. For example, if there's 20 women in a room making a decision about men's health care and there's only one man in the room, that one man isn't going to be heard, and that policy probably is not going to be in his favor. So I think it's really important to have women at the table and able to contribute to those conversations. My name is Kirsten Foster, and I'm the Advocacy Officer at Girl Up, which means that I run our advocacy program that's here domestically in the U.S. and then also abroad. So at the federal level, there's only a little under 20% of women in Congress. That translates to 106 women in Congress currently, and out of those 106 women, only 38 are women of color.
Have positions of power not only in this country but around the world, and historically disproportionately represented by men, their decisions matter more, their voices matter more, the issues that matter to them are given a prevalence in the national dialogue. So getting more women in public office changes the political direction of the country, the city, the world, really, and the issues that are more important for them can really take precedent, really be on the table.
Women are more likely to be better advocates for improving life in the U.S. They're more likely to compromise. They are more likely to negotiate with other parties. And so I think that if you bring women to the table, you are more likely to get things done. Right now in Congress, as we all know, there's a lot of political stalemate. We've seen the government shut down quite a few times recently. And so I think bringing more women into the mix can help ease that political stalemate.
Women tend to lose their ambition for running for public office very early, like in grade school. They don't see themselves as leaders in elected. That's a problem.
Women who run for office or even show really any ambition are really not taken seriously, and I think we saw this so clearly in the election in 2016. Sort of all of the comments about Hillary's outfits or the fact that she wasn't smiling, or all of these things, this double standard that is placed on women in politics, or women with ambition, that men don't have to deal with.
Women are put in a box at times of you have to be friendly and you have to be nice and you need to smile, but what happens if you go outside of that box? You're called bossy, you're called aggressive, and I don't think that you have to be those things. I think you can be assertive. I think you can know what you want. I think you can be passionate, and people who aren't okay with that will then call you bossy. I and Girl Up believe that getting more women into leadership roles and training them on how to do advocacy, how to talk to their members of Congress or decision makers can make a huge impact into giving girls that confidence to go in and say, I want to make a change and I can make a change, and I'm going to do this through being a member of Congress or running for my local office or running for my state board. I think that when there's just men in those positions, it's hard for women to see themselves in those positions.
We go out and we talk to women one-on-one and in small groups and sometimes larger groups and explain to them that this is not the big scary they think it is, and running for local office isn't like what you see when you're looking to run at the federal level.
For anyone in college, I would recommend the program called We Lead. It's based here in DC. And so if you live in the DMV area, it's a great program to do. It's run by Jennifer Lawless, who does a lot of work on why women don't run for office. And they taught us how to fundraise. They taught us how to write letters to get our name out there. They taught us how to network with other people. They taught us kind of just like the ins and outs of running for office and what that looks like. So I would definitely highly recommend any books by Jennifer Lawless on running for office or being part of her fellowship.
Emerge is an organization that trains women to run for public office. 60% of our alumni are women of color. And women of color have a lot more ground to make up as far as not being represented, clearly being underrepresented. So we work very hard to make sure that we are opening the doors and making sure that these women are, represented in our organization and in the training, but also when it comes time to run, making sure that they have just as much support from, that they can, and inspiration from us that we can give.
I think there is a lot of room for conversations between men. I think a lot of men, if there's a woman talking to them about feminism, they can really shut down and say this has nothing to do with me. And I think that's quite dangerous. But I think if more men were willing to really have those challenging conversations with their brothers, their peers, their fathers, the other men in their lives, if they really believe in this, I think that can do a lot of good. I think getting men more involved in supporting women in politics is sort of underneath the larger engaging men to support gender equality, which I think at its core is getting men to understand that gender equality affects them too, and gender inequality is actually hurting them.
Our goal isn't to make the men feel uncomfortable, but if they're not doing their job, maybe they ought to. And I'm hoping this will drive better leadership across the board. We're all hoping that the men will step up more, that they'll take more interest in the issues that women bring to the table.
I think that both parties benefit from having more women in office, and not just women in office. I think there needs to also be more women in leadership positions also.
I'm fascinated by the example of Rwanda. 20 years ago, you have a monumental genocide, 800,000 people are killed, and essentially the way that Rwanda responded was with full gender equality. They now have the highest rate of women in their parliament in the world, and it's actually had really incredible economic benefits. They're the fastest growing economy in Central Africa. Their poverty rate has dropped tremendously, inequality has dropped tremendously, and I think it's really kind of a fascinating example that giving women the reins politically can have huge benefits for the entire country, not just those women you encourage to become part of office. If we talk about that more and look at that more, I think that's a really powerful argument in favor of greater female participation in politics, because look what it did in Rwanda, look what it could do around the world.
The Minority Scholars Program is a club that was founded in order to bridge the achievement gap.
Minority Scholars Program is a peer group where students can support each other.
When they told me that it was a program about minorities getting together and trying to close the achievement gap, I was like, I have to be a part of that.
We try to create a culture of academic achievement, of scholarship in MSP.
I have a lot of passion for MSP, simply because it's all about closing the achievement gap, and I know my peers, Hispanic and African Americans, us minorities, have a disadvantage.
And what the achievement gap is, it's just a gap in mostly opportunities between students of color and other students.
So we want to get more students of color in AP courses. We want to make sure that they're successful in AP courses.
If we take AP classes or any other class that we struggle with, we just ask our friends and they try to help us out.
They have tutoring, I believe, and you can get in groups with the other kids.
Oh yeah, and if you need help with like the college process, or if you need help with FAFSA or any of those type of applications, like they can be pretty like complex and complicated.
So a typical meeting is completely student run. As a sponsor, I kind of just sit on the side.
We have awesome leaders, students.
But typically our meetings are usually discussions and trying to inform our students what's going on today's issues.
They usually have a PowerPoint, they have groups. They pretty much teach it like a class, and the kids get really engaged. It's very impressive.
This is an advocating club. We advocate to close the achievement gap.
We are able to discuss controversial issues that some people may not be comfortable with.
On Tuesday, we talked about DACA.
We talked about the "It's Okay to Be White" posters that were hung up around the school and around the state.
So the meetings are functional in the sense that we are tackling we're learning about the gap and we're tackling the gap, but we also have fun.
Here at Eastern, we're just helping students with their homework at Homework Club.
Trying to target like younger kids, so that's why we go to Eastern to tutor, because like closing the achievement gap, it starts at a young age.
We believe that, you know, the earlier you start with academic support, the better it is in the future.
When you close the achievement gap, more minorities have a chance of getting into a better college and like receiving the education that they need.
Tutoring kids at middle schools for free, which is something you don't get often, in order to give them the tools to succeed.
I just helped a student do an online grammar course, and yeah, he was just needed some help spelling some words, and I was there when he needed help.
They're really shy. It's actually kind of cute.
I hate seeing people when they're like, I know they're in distress and that they're maybe too scared to ask for help. So that's when, as an MSP member, you just have to literally just go up to them and tell them, what are you working on? You know, like ask them, what are you working on?
My favorite thing about MSP is being able to, you know, help out people who don't get a say in anything.
My favorite part is like coming in every Tuesday and the whole room is filled with students that want to make impact on the school. So that's really like empowering.
MSP is important because it's a club that not only tries to bridge the achievement gap, as I said, but it also brings people together.
It's kind of that bright spot in my week where I come and I sit around and I listen to these kids and I say, wow, we weren't dealing with these things when I was growing up.
You actually get to say what you want. You get to say how you feel, and you won't get judged.
I feel like it provides like minorities just a safe space to like talk about what they want to talk about.
And it's a place to make new friends, and if you feel outcasted, then, you know, just come to MSP and we'll take you in. We'll be your friend. We'll help you study. We'll help you do anything you can imagine, and we'll be there. MSP will be there for you.
The Minority Scholars Program is open to everyone and anyone who is interested in talking about the issues that minorities are facing today.
Join MSP! Yeah.
My name is Tony Caston, and I'm the manager of the Mission Muffins Workforce Development Program here at Central Union Mission. Mission Muffins is a program to empower homeless and employment-challenged individuals. It's a multifaceted program. We teach them specific kitchen skills, baking skills. We teach them how to make muffins, scones. We make handheld pies. We produce products that we sell through a concession stand that we have out on Massachusetts Avenue. We operate Monday through Friday. I wanted the guys to have an opportunity to showcase their their goods and to actually interact with people that they normally wouldn't interact with. Working in the kitchen is one thing, but actually taking the results of your efforts and seeing the reactions of people to those efforts is where the real reward, the real benefit comes from. A lot of these guys have never really had a full-time job. So we focus on work discipline, trying to teach them what's expected of them in the real workplace. You take a guy who's never had a job, who's sold drugs, who comes from a very, very tough background, who's been in prison. You know, we have one guy who is 65 years old who's been incarcerated for 40 years of his life. This is the first real job he's ever had.
Like I say, with no direction, you know, the only thing that's on my mind is how I'm gonna get some money. Not working, but what I've been doing all my life, robbing, stealing, but I came through SilverLens mission. I went through the program, changed my whole life, and a lot of good things happened since I changed.
The hardest thing for me to understand is that was that a lot of these guys, their idea of a future was growing up was either death or prison, early death or prison. Trying to define what a future could look like for them and help them see the potential for their own future probably is the most rewarding aspect of what I do, but it's the main purpose as well. I'll get new guys and I'll say, hold your hand out here, and I'll say, that's how you are. You can see your hand, but you can't see anything out past there. You can't see the future. So my job, part of my job is to take that hand down so they can see everything else that's out there. You know, I see campaigns that say help end homelessness, help end hunger. Well, you can't end either one. You never will. It's foolish to even pretend that you can. All we can do is try and alleviate some of the suffering and the pain. I think more of an effort needs to be made to develop opportunities and point people towards a future. There's a story of a young girl on a beach after a storm that's littered with thousands of starfish, and an old man walks out on the beach and she's picking them up and throwing them back in the ocean. And he says, what are you doing? And she says, I'm saving these starfish. And he looks around and he says, well, you can't save them all. And she bends down, picks one up and throws it back and says, but I saved that one. We can't, no one of us can do everything, but each one of us can do something. So collectively we can make a huge difference.
The East Coast has seen a dramatic increase in deer population over the past few decades. In Rock Creek Park, the deer population has gone from almost none in the 1960s to 55 deer per square mile in 2017. This has had an adverse effect on vegetation in the park.
We've had about 3 decades of very high deer populations, and the reasons are that the deer don't have predators here, and that we have created really nice habitat for them. Deer really love edge habitats in suburban environments, and the edges of forests and the edges of development, and that has been increasing in this area over the past decades.
In 2013, the National Park Service began a deer management plan to curb the white-tailed deer population in the park. During the winter months, the park implemented deer culling, where sharpshooters from the U.S. Department of Agriculture would kill deer in order to control the population.
A number of roads are closed off, and the sharpshooters are in the park, and they will remove as many deer as are needed to get to this optimal level, which is 15 to 20 per square mile. The venison that comes from deer management is donated to food pantries in the district, primarily the DC Central Kitchen, and over the past 5 or so years, more than 7,000 pounds of meat have been donated.
We saw Rock Creek Park as a sanctuary, actually, a place where they never had killed any wildlife. They'd never allowed any killing of wildlife. And the way we got people was we just went out and had rallies. We had a rally the first time they killed deer. We only had 4 hours to prepare for it and advertise it, but one of our members was really, really good at painting huge banners that we could use. And so we got out that night. Got out with the rally, and a lot of people joined us, and we kept it up every night for a while.
In 2012, Save the Rock Creek Deer filed suit against the National Park Service on the basis that the deer management program violated the park's ban on hunting.
The courts decided against us.
That we're doing the deer management in the first place is to allow the forest to be healthy and have regeneration. And what that means is the deer were having a lot of impacts on vegetation and tree seedlings, most especially. So they're eating all those little trees that were going to grow up to be the forest of tomorrow. So if the park did not take any action, the forest over the long term would decline.
I think the real truth is, I think they have to reduce the population of deer because of the neighbors, not because of the park.
Well, the deer have been a problem for a number of years, but I have been in the garden for about 20 years, since the late 1990s, and they were, during that time frame in the 90s, were becoming increasingly problematic, getting into the garden, eating vegetables and plants that gardeners had planted. We're trying to take this action in a way that allows the forest to recover and all the animals that depend on that forest. So it's not just plants and trees, it's rabbits and flying squirrels and foxes and all the other animals that live in the park depend on that vegetation.
The Park Service's population control program was based off of a study by the U.S. Geological Survey detailing the damage to vegetation caused by the deer. Skeptical of the Park Service's conclusion, Save the Rock Creek Deer asked an expert to reanalyze the data collected by the survey.
We had this professor from Yale University, who's very well known internationally, look at it, and he said, no, but they did not show that the deer were harming the park. They did show that deer eat plants, but we already knew that.
At Catoctin Mountain Park, deer management has been ongoing for 9 years, and they have seen a 10-fold increase, so 10 times more seedlings in their forest since they've been managing deer. So we know it can work.